So this is the last lecture of Unit 6. This one is on language. So this will wrap up our learning and thinking unit. So we talked about learning both classically and operantly, and now we also talked about thinking, both logical as well as illogical. And now we're going to talk about the process of language. So we're going to go a little bit back to what we talked about with development and the stages of development with language, etc. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at that. And then we're going to take a little bit of a look at how regional areas, linguistic relativity sort of gets involved in language, and then just sort of how do we get to where we are? Because again, a lot of our learning is latent learning, and most all of our language is latent learning. I mean, you may have a vocabulary list for this unit, and you may have to learn some vocabulary words for this test, but most of the words that you use in your vocabulary never showed up on a list. You just sort of picked them up. So that's what we're going to talk about here in this unit. So when we talk about language, we'll talk about our spoken, written, gestured works, and the way that we combine them to communicate meaning. And we've mentioned this before, but let me say it again. There's 3 levels of communication when it comes to language. 7% of our language is verbal. It is the actual words that I say. 38% of it approximately is vocal. So it's the volume, the pitch, the tone, the rhythm. 55% is body. It's the facial expressions, gesture, body language. And again, this can vary by region. So again, if we talk about, reading, when you read a text or when you read this PowerPoint from someone else, you're getting 7% verbal, but how you take it depends a lot on what you sort of come in with. And again, even certain words can vary by language, but how we take even words in our language can be very, very confused. 38% can be vocal. I mean, there's a difference between me saying, hey, you have a test tomorrow versus, hey, you have a test tomorrow. Same words. One seems a little bit more serious. The person who's talking really quick, really excited, really all those other things, you kind of think that's really important versus the person who kind of talks like this and it's getting their point across, but they're so bored with it. Why would I be excited about it? That all falls into the vocal. And again, facial expression, gestures. There's a difference between when somebody's talking to you and they're talking to you and they're making eye contact with you and they're sort of seeing how you're reacting, mimicking you and everything else, versus someone talking to you while they do this and sort of trying to get their point across. And then suddenly you're not listening as much because they don't think it's important to say to you, why should I think it's important to listen to it? So those 3 things sort of combine and make up our language. So again, 93% of it is nonverbal. Nonverbal communication is read 10 times more accurately by women because, again, women process language with both the left and the right side of their brains, where guys can be a little bit more left brain when it comes to communication. Most nonverbal communication is both given and read subconsciously. There's some times where we get done talking to someone, we leave, we go away, and we're just like, man, I got a weird feeling about this person because you picked up a bunch of stuff subconsciously. The reason why, because of associations you've made, whatever, that 2 people can hear the exact words coming from someone and they sort of take it differently. My wife and I went to a Christmas party and some lady came up and started talking to us about whatever. I wasn't really paying attention, but I heard words coming out of her mouth and whatnot. And I'm looking around, this, that, and the other. So then she leaves and my wife goes, did you see that? I go, I see what? She goes, she was totally judging my shoes. When? You didn't hear the words, you didn't see the eye contact, you didn't see the... No, I saw none of that, but she saw all of it. And I'll be damned if not a week later, the lady brought up her shoes that she was wearing at the party. It's like superhero powers. I don't know how they do that. But again, most of it's done on a subconscious level. And this is why women sometimes struggle with guys when it comes to communication, because they're like, come on, I'm trying. And guys are just like, it's why women will, flip their hair, laugh at your jokes when they're not funny, sort of, touch your arm and move it down, whatever, because they're trying to knock you over the head with this nonverbal stuff. Between women, nonverbal can be overread sometimes. But again, it's done on a subconscious level. Smile that's less than 0.25 seconds. It's like, that's looked at as a smirk. It's almost sarcastic. Yeah, if somebody smiles like this, ah, that's fake. It's too long of a smile. It's not that money smile, that 0.68-second smile, or whatever is the money smile. So we pick all this stuff up, but we're not picking it up consciously. Most of it is picked up subconsciously. So again, nonverbal communication involves at least two people. One person's giving it, one person's receiving it. And sometimes we don't always get or we don't always receive what's being sent, and we get this all the time with text messages. If my wife texts me the phrase, "it doesn't matter," does that mean it doesn't matter, which is no big deal? Or does it mean it doesn't matter, which means it really does matter? Whatever could be whatever, yeah, whatever, or it could be whatever, which means I better buy flowers on the way home because I did something I don't know, so again, and it can vary by culture, how much space you give between two people. Where, we live in Cypress, Texas, we like a lot of space. I'm walking through whatever, don't get in my space. You're on the number 9 subway in Queens and someone's armpit is in your face. It's like, it's rush hour, what are you gonna do? So a lot of it depends on what we grow up with, facial expressions, all these things, and they're governed by these social rules, and they can vary greatly geographically. The thumbs up in America, this is, thumbs up, but you do that in other areas, and it's like the middle finger. It's like, right up yours or something like that. That's not so nice. You do this right here in most countries. It's like, hey, that's okay. That's good. That's okay. But, in other countries, it can mean you're this kind of whole sort of a thing, whether it's like that or whether it's like that. This is one, you take this one right here. You do that in the state of Texas. You do that. I'm wearing an A&M shirt, but you do that in the state of Texas. That's hook 'em horns. That's Longhorn. That's Matthew McConaughey. All right. Here we go. That's hook 'em horns. You do this in Italy, and it basically means your wife's a whore. Your wife is less than faithful. That's what that means. So if I take some guy from Venice to Austin, Texas for a football game, and the Longhorns score, and everyone's like, whoa, it's a little bit weird. So again, this can vary quite a bit, and it changes over time. Take a look at these kids back in the 1920s. These are schools in the 1920s, elementary schools in the 1920s. Look at how they're doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Right there, look at that, which makes complete sense when you think about it. When you're doing a pledge, the flag is right there. I pledge. There's a flag, and I am pledging myself to the flag. That's how little kids did the pledge. Can you do that today? No, you cannot. No, you cannot. Why not? Hitler ruined it. He ruined so much. Can't have a little short mustache anymore. Can't name a kid Adolf. You ruin a lot, but you can't do that. I mean, if I were to tell my kids second period, hey, you know what, we're going to go old school. When we do the pledge in the morning, right to it, I don't think I'm going to be around the school too much longer. Okay, so things like that. Over time, gestures can change. Take a look at these knuckleheads here. A little 8th grade prom in Wisconsin, a bunch of kids doing the whole waving high. It's a senior picture at a Sci somewhere school. And that's going to rub some people the wrong way. And then sometimes we're unaware of certain gestures or symbols or whatever that have been taken over. A few years ago, this unit 6 test, this kid right here, look at that little thing right there, doing a little, this is known as WP, white power. The okay sign, how you doing? I'm doing okay. What are you, a racist? This just used to be okay. Not it's okay, I'm white. This just used to be okay. But now this suddenly means that. I used to give this test on unit 6. Well, I still give the test on unit 6, but my test used to look like this. Here's a little rat thinking, and then, hey, you're gonna do okay on the test. And now suddenly I look like I'm a Nazi. So you really got to kind of stay up on these things, on what certain things mean and what they don't mean, and all these other things. Sometimes a lot of our nonverbal communication that we're given is not intentional. I have a very mean looking face. I'm a mean looking guy. I really am. So when a lot of people, see me for the first time, they're just like, oh, he's just angry. He's an angry person. It's just my face. And then if I'm thinking, then I start to furrow my brow. I'm just walking through the store. And I'm just, oh my God, I'm thinking I got to go get toilet paper or whatever. And people are like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Why are you being so microaggressive to me? It becomes a big problem. So sometimes we got to be aware of the vibe we're sending, because people are picking it up, whether it's intentional or not. Some other things there on some nonverbal cues, how they vary across cultures. If you want to take a look at that, you want to offend people in certain ways, you want to do that, you want to learn that, there you go. It's all right there for you. All right, now let's talk about breaking down words. Words are broken down into phonetics, and phonetics are sound. When you talk about phonics, phonetics, these are the sounds that are used and combined to make words, to make syllables that go on and make words. For example, the word fearlessness has 9 distinct phonetic sounds. That sound of the F, the E, and the A combined for a long E, go on, go on, go on. Yet it only has 3 syllables, fearlessness. But it's got 9 distinct sounds that make up those 3 syllables that makes up that one word. So phonetics are these little sounds. Now, again, humans, when they're born, they can make 154 unique sounds. These phonetic sounds that make up over 7,000 languages. And not every one of these 150 unique 54 unique sounds that we can make are part of a language. It's not part of a language, at least not that I'm aware of. But out of those 154 unique sounds we can make, 40 of them make up the English language. So what happens is little babies, they're making all these sounds, but then what they start to do is they start to limit it to the phonetic sounds that they're hearing around them. So you go from 154 down to about 40, a few more outside of that, but about 40. German language is 45, Russian language is 39, French is 37, Italian is 30, Spanish is 24. These are all rooted in Latin. So a lot of these phonetic sounds are very familiar to one another. Yet when it comes to languages from other regions of the world, the Arabic and Persian language of 34 and 32, some of their phonetic sounds are not used in the Latin-based languages. And Chinese and Japanese, 35, 22 phonetic sounds each, don't necessarily use the same ones. Some of them are. Hawaii only has 11 in the Hawaiian language. And this is why the biggest thing that we struggle with when we learn a second language is making those phonetic sounds, especially the older you are when you try to learn that language. Because at birth, we're able to recognize all the sounds and we're able to make all the sounds because we've got all these neural connections everywhere. We've just been making all these neural connections. Then if I don't use it, I lose it. I'm sure as a little baby, I could roll my R's. If I was a little, I could roll my R's. You asked me to roll my R's today. It's like, I can't do it. I can't do it because that neural connection where I used to be able to roll my R's is severed because I'm not making that jump across the synapse anymore. So the toughest part about learning a new language is enunciation. Again, if you take a Hindu-speaking adult with the Hindi T, they get it 100% of the time. A little English-speaking baby or in an English-speaking home, he's not quite speaking English yet, but from 6 to 8, he can recognize the sound of the T and he can mimic the T. But by the time he's 8 to 10, 10 to 12 months, where he's not surrounded by the Hindi language anymore, he can't make it anymore. Then when you get to an English-speaking adult, only about 10% of them can hear it, recognize it, and say it. And again, this is why we have so many troubles pronouncing certain names, depending on what our native language is. And I know it gets very frustrating when someone mispronounces your name because you have been pronouncing that name since you were 1. So of course it's easy for you. Of course you have that neural connection and everything else. But when you have certain names where a vowel and a consonant don't quite make what you're used to it making, it takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of repetition. It takes a little bit, and it's not people being disrespectful. It's not that people don't care. It's hard. They've got to learn your name, not just learn what your name is, but learn how to say your name, which is why I always get unbelievably stressed. And please don't do this to me. I ask every year, please don't do this to me. But when I get nominated to read names at a graduation award ceremony. It drives me. It's just anxiety filled because I know this is an incredibly important time for someone. And if suddenly their name is mispronounced, because I would have been upset. My daughter, Julia Diane Porter, graduated last year and her name was pronounced very fluently. But if someone said Julia Diane Porter, I probably would have had a problem with that. And I have no idea what languages those phonetics came from. But it would have probably been a little offensive. How can it's Julia Diane Porter? How can you not just see that? So again, we got to be a little bit sympathetic. We got to be a little bit sympathetic when sometimes people are trying to pronounce names that are outside of their natural comfort zone. Now, here's what's also interesting when it comes to enunciation. You ever notice, suddenly I'm Jerry Seinfeld, hey, you ever notice when bands from outside the United States who are singing pop music, rock music, rap music, whatever, that when they're interviewed, they speak with this unbelievably deep accent. Yet when they sing, accent's gone. It's completely gone, you know? So they're enunciating their music different than they're enunciating their language, their conversations. You know, if you listen to, let's take Paul McCartney from the Beatles, genius. You take Paul McCartney from the Beatles and you go, well, how'd you come up with a song yesterday? Well, you know, when we came up with a song yesterday originally, well, I didn't know it was going to be cold, so I just thought it was scrambled eggs. I just wrote a song, Scrambled Eggs. You know, that's why. So I wrote about scrambled eggs. Sounds like I was having breakfast, you know. And so it's this very thick Liverpoolian accent. And it's just kind of talking. It's just kind of what it is. It's kind of how I'm going, you know. But it doesn't sound like he's from Brooklyn, you know. So, but when he sings yesterday, suddenly that accent goes away, because what these groups were trying to do in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s is they were trying to sound American. The Beatles were trying to sound like Elvis. The Rolling Stones were trying to sound like Muddy Waters and other guys who sang the blues. And even you can make the argument that Elvis was trying to sound like Chuck Berry and Little Richard before him, and Ray Charles. But it's this sound, and the sound of popular music is American music. You know, you say what you want about America, but what we've exported entertainment-wise, visually from movies, whatever, but this pop music, this rock music, this combination of blues from the Chicago, Memphis, Cleveland, Harlem area, jazz from Harlem, gospel from the South, and then country music from Tennessee. You combine it all and it makes rock and roll. Rap music has its roots in New York and LA, but you hear a rapper from Australia, suddenly she's sounding all South Central, you know, and because they're trying to sound like these popular people. So again, the way that we sing is sometimes enunciated differently than the way that we talk. 80s and 90s Valley talk, what we hear others say, you guys have your own little bit with it. You guys got your own charms, you know, but this self-absorbed, self-important, oh my God, you know, holding on to things. I'm so sure, you know, holding on to these sort of tones. It was very 80s and 90s Valley talk. 2000 to the present, there's this thing called vocal frying, where it's not just holding on to the syllable, but it's lowering the octave. And you hear this a lot with girls who watch the Kardashians for a long time, or watch The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, and then suddenly they're watching this show and, oh my God, we went on this date. Now we're going to work on our relationship. And I think it's really great, so important that we're better together. And we really like each other. And Chloe just decided to go on Instagram before me. And this deepening of the voice, which sounds a lot like Forrest Gump, you know, this deepening and holding on. And the theory behind it is people think that if the voice is deeper, it's more important. And if you hold on to it, it gives people a chance to digest it more. And it becomes this, it hits this certain sort of sound, which some use as I'm more important when I talk like this, but for a lot of people who hear it, it just sounds dumb, you know? But again, is that sexist of me? You know, or do guys have this as well? Yeah, I do. Yeah, let's go, chill. You know, there's that too. All right, there's that too, but you have to be very cognizant of the way that you talk as you're going into interviews and everything else. It can be the way you talk with your girls or your bros, but then there's a way you got to talk in a professional way as well. Now, morphem is a meaning of words, and the meanings of words can be a prefix, could be a suffix, could be a root word, whatever. But when you add that to the word, it changes the meaning of the word. I know it sounds like an English class. We're going to get there. All right. For example, the word players has three morphems: play, the action of play; player, someone who does play; players, many people who play. So if I take one out, add another to it, it's going to change the definition. Talked versus talking. Hey, speaking of your own words, what the hell does talking mean? Yeah, I know, me and this girl, we're talking. I don't even know. So you've got your own little sort of morphemes and meanings that you got going on. Syntax, I guess it would be more of that. And English has 100,000 morphemes, which make over 616,000 words in some of these sort of combinations. All right. Now, when we get to the rules of grammar, I'm not gonna, because I don't know what a dangling participle is. All right. But when we get to grammar, grammars are the rules. And this is usually when we're learning a new language where we get a little bit confused about it. The rules of how do you combine the words. Common mistakes when learning a new language. You know, someone that says I am happy versus happy I am, and suddenly they sound like Yoda, because they just get the words in the wrong. Because a lot of times when we're learning a new language, that becomes difficulty. The idea, you know, one of the reasons I struggle with Spanish, besides the fact I really didn't try that hard, is that's my own fault. But I had trouble with syntax. I had trouble with conjugating verbs. I had trouble with the idea that there were some words that were masculine and there were some words that were feminine. It was hard for me to grasp that. Yet if you grow up learning Spanish, how you doing over there? Do I need to pause this? Need to chat with me? I can pause it. You want to say hi to the recorded video? No? Okay, my wife's over there. I'm going to pause it real quick. See what she's up to. Okay, sorry about that. My wife had to show me a picture that she drew of me, and I think I'm going to sue her. Anyways, syntax, the orders of words; semantics, the meanings of words. In fact, especially in the English language, we've got so many words that mean the same thing. You know, if I were to tell you, hey, I got to go talk to one of me and my students, I got to start talking to one of my students. They're like, oh my God, you should be arrested. You know, so sometimes we can get confused with that. Mind is a terrible thing to waste versus, do you mind if I join you for dinner? What, do you like praying if you join me for dinner? Again, when you're learning a new language, these are some difficulties that we have there as well. All right, now let's get into the psychology of it. Let's talk about these stages of development, which we briefly talked about when we did the development unit, but let's get a little bit more into it. First stage that we go through in development was called the pre-linguistic stage, called pre-linguistic. Why? Before linguistic language. So before we're actually able to speak, we're actually learning words. Kids know words before they say words. As a matter of fact, the first word a child usually learns is the word no, because the word no comes with the sound no, that loud no, that just like, you know, Watson with the steel bar and the hammer scaring baby Albert, that loud noise, we associate the loud noise with the bad thing and the head shaking everything else. So in this receptive stage, from birth to 12 months of age, we are picking up the sounds. We are picking up the rhythms and all these other things, you know, that when our parents ask us as a little kid, you know, do you want your bottle? You know, and oh, that goes up. So when I want something or I have a question about something, I need to take it up a little bit. They're getting all this stuff. So even though they don't know how to express themselves, they're learning this, they're receiving it, they're understanding instructions and all these other things. Then they start from 4 to 10 months of age. Simultaneously, they're in what is called the babbling stage. And the babbling stage is when they begin to make the sounds with their mouth, all those phonetic sounds that we talked about, and they start to mimic the phonetic sounds that they hear along with the pacing and everything else. And it's limited to the language and the accents that they hear, because if I have a baby that is raised in Birmingham, England, they're actually going to babble with an English accent. versus a baby born in Birmingham, Alabama is going to possibly babble with a Southern accent. And I don't know how that would work. Go goo, I guess that would be a British accent. Gaga goo, maybe that's a Southern, that doesn't sound Southern, whatever. But this idea that I'll pick these things up, as a matter of fact, right next to this video down below, there should be a video of these two little guys right here, these two twins babbling to each other. And if you click on that and you listen to that, and I'm not putting it within the PowerPoint because then YouTube gets me for copyright, blah, blah, blah. But if you listen to the video of these two little boys, you'll hear them talk to one another about how this guy's missing a sock and this guy's really concerned. And there's hand gestures, bah, 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 and they're shaking their head and they're doing all this. So again, they've received it and they're starting to learn to make it. And the asking a question, I'm very frustrated. They're starting to work that out. Even deaf babies will begin to start babbling with their hands when parents are making signs like, more milk. They'll do sort of things that look like it, but don't quite get in there. Then from 12 to 24 months, you get into the one-word stage. And the one-word stage is where you start to communicate using a single word. And this is learned from modeling, conditioning, whatnot. When you say ball and then suddenly a ball appears, you go, ball. And then just saying the word different ways, you can come up with a lot of different things. Ball, I'm excited about the ball. Ball hurt me. Ball, where is my ball? So they're getting all these rules about language that they picked up before, and they're starting to put it with actual words in that one-word stage. Then 2 to 3 years of age, they get into the two-word stage. Now, again, we talk 2 years of age, that's terrible twos, because they know words and they're starting to put them together and they get frustrated because sometimes it doesn't work. But again, they use all these nonverbal cues to combine it with the words they know to make ideas come across. Mama gone? Where did my mother go? Mama gone. Mom just left me. Barking down below, whole nother thing going on. And again, a lot of that, even what my dogs are doing right now, is nonverbal communication. The bark, 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 bark. It's the same sound, but the fact that it's very excited now and they're going to the door, they're communicating to me, as annoying as it may be. Telegraphic speech starts to happen from 3 to 5 years of age. And from 3 to 5 years of age, I just want to take this ball and throw it at the door. From 3 to 5 years of age, this is where the child starts to speak like a telegram, kind of like in text messages where you don't use all the verbs and adjectives that you might have to. Usually their syntax is a little bit off, where they're trying to get the rules, but they're a little bit off on the rules. It's like, Timmy, where did you go? I go to the park. Now, for Timmy to say, I go to the park, that's a good effort, because going to the park, I want to go to the park, I'm going to the park. Well, I already did it. So let me just put the ED on there. If I can put an ING on there, certainly I should be able to put an ED on there. But of course, it doesn't work. So when Jimmy goes, I go to the park, you need to come back to him with, oh, you went to the park? Did you have fun when you went to the park? And that's why it's very important to correct the kid, but you correct them gently. How you doing, Tommy? Doing good. No, you're doing well. No one does good. You're doing well. You don't do that, because now he's not doing either. So the syntax is usually a little bit off, and mostly verbs and nouns are being put in, learning to put those in the correct order, because again, depending on the language, English speaking baby, it's a black cat. You put the black in front of the cat. You don't go cat black. The Spanish speaking baby is saying gato negro, which is the reverse. You put the gato, the cat first, and the negro, black, second. And by the way, I don't even know if I'm enunciating those correctly. Then by age 5+, this is where it becomes complete sentence usage. All right, this is where the kids start to put all the words together. And as I mentioned before in a previous lecture, this is also why it's very important that as a child is going through these 5 stages, that you talk to the kid properly. I mean, you don't have to talk properly. How are you? You have to, hey, how are you doing? Speak properly. Would you like some porridge or anything like that? Porridge. How did that come from? But what you have to talk, you want to talk to the kid the way you want the kid to sound, because if you talk to the kid with baby talk, it's all right to talk to the kid excited. You want to go to the park? You're going to have fun when you go to the park. There's nothing wrong with that. But you go, you want to go to the park? Is the park a lot of fun? It's a baby. Where you go to the park? You talk like that to the kid. The kid goes, oh, those are the phonetic sounds I need to make. Oh, that's the way I need to put them together. Then suddenly this kid starts elementary school, and he talks like a baby. Johnny's first day of elementary school, Johnny, how old are you? I'm 5 years old. I was 4, now I'm 5, because that's how he's heard language. So to him, he's enunciating perfectly correctly. Yet if you had a child who was talked to well or talked to normally, like you're communicating with a human, you go, hey, Billy, how old are you? Yeah, I'm 5. What's up? He's going to talk like a little person because that's what he's heard. These kids are going to model it all day long. Now, how'd they get to this? How do we get language? Well, Skinner would say that it's really basic. Back to the beginning of this unit, it's just operant conditioning. I say ball, I get the ball. I say mama, mama appears. I want daddy, I say mama, but I want daddy, I say mama, and mom keeps appearing. I want daddy, so I better learn to say daddy if I want daddy to appear. So again, it's all a series of rewards and punishment. Bandura comes into the equation a little bit because somebody else says pizza, they get pizza. I better learn to say pizza. If I want pizza too, I better learn to say that because I see what other people are saying and they're getting. So I got to learn to say that too. I got to learn to say it the way that they're saying it. And again, a lot of the slang language you use, the enunciation you use, it's basically modeling other people who have done it. Neuroscientists come up with this idea of what's called statistical learning. Basically, the greatest number of neural connections we ever get is in the first 5 years. And after that, we start pruning away at it. All right. So early on in language development, this is when we're putting all this stuff together. But if we never put it together, you get a kid who's never surrounded by language. You get a kid who's never hearing words talk to him, and he's raised in a closet. And sadly, we have case studies of this. Then suddenly he's 12 and he never made these connections. You're never going to be able to teach him a language because his brain rewired for other things. He lost the Wernicke and the Broca area. All right. So statistical learning basically says that you can't learn language as a newborn or 1 month old because you don't have the connections. But by the time you become 2, now you got them. And then once you're an adult, they just become more defined. And these phonetic sounds you don't use, they break up and those go away. Now, Noam Chomsky would go further in saying that we have what is called inborn universal grammar. And inborn universal grammar basically focuses on the nature idea of language because humans have the Broca area, humans have the Wernicke area, the ability to recognize the language of others, the ability to move our mouths and make a sound that makes sense, where we're just not using nonverbal communication like my dog is right now. These properties are ours, and they're kind of the same in all languages. As a matter of fact, the sound of a lot of languages is the same. 1929, they did what was called the Bobo Kiki effect, and they made up this made-up language. There is no word called Bobo in any word or Kiki in any word, but they took people who spoke different languages from around the world. They took infants as young as 4 months old. They put people all the way to their 90s, and they basically asked people, which one of these is a Boba and which one of these is a Kiki? Which is a boba, which is a kiki. And across the world, they would say that this was boba, this was kiki. Kiki, sharp. Kik sounds sharp. And a lot of languages, words for sharp, even the word sharp is sharp. It's cutting. Boba, round. Our word for round kind of sounds round. So a lot of languages sound a little bit similar, and that's why we can sort of make it up, because even though languages are different, they're sort of based the same culturally around the world. Now, again, learning a second language is easier the younger we are, because the younger we are, we have more phonetic connections. And, we're learning, we're taking all this stuff in, and a lot of the stuff that we're taking it in subconsciously. We're taking it in latently. So again, you teach the little kid, you want to go to the bathroom, you go to the restroom, toilet, baño, throw it in there, and they'll get it. The younger you are, the easier it is, because the older you become, it's like, okay, what do I want to say in English? Okay, how do I make that into Spanish? Now say it in Spanish. Now you're saying something to me in Spanish. What is that in English? Now what do I want to say back in English? Put it in Spanish. And there's a whole process. Versus people who speak a second language fluently, they just hear the second language. They just say the second language. It's automatically. It's like music. Okay, linguistic relativity is the idea of our region, our area can have a huge effect on our language. You take a place like Japan, who has more terms for colors from light blue to dark blue than are found in the English language, because blue is a more important color in Japan. When you talk about, if I asked you to come up with a bunch of different words for snow, a lot of you guys would have difficulty. Why? Because it doesn't snow a lot here. But if you're from the Midwest and I ask you words for snow, you'd go, well, there's flurries, there's slush, there's sleet, there's a powdery snow, kind of a dry snow, there's a wet snow. There's all different types of snow. But in the South, you don't know that because it's not around. As a matter of fact, there's 50 terms for snow with American Eskimos. I don't even know. Am I still allowed to say Eskimo? I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say that anymore. So it's all, and again, depending on who you are, I'll say Eskimo. It depends on the culture you're from. Some people don't care. All right. Do you refer to a police officer as a policeman or a policewoman or just a police person or officer? Or, a lot of it has to do with how you're raised. And then even the enunciation, the fact that down south, where y'all going versus up north, where you guys going? Or in Jersey, where you's going, where yin's going in Pittsburgh. So depending on what you're surrounded by, again, I'm from the Midwest. And I came down south and I heard y'all all over the place. And a year and a half, 2 years later, I go back up north to visit my friends. I go, hey, what y'all doing later? They're like, y'all, what up, country? It's just easier to say y'all instead of you guys or all of you. When you take a look at a beverage, carbonated beverage, what do you call it? Down south, we call it a Coke. Went someplace for a Coke. It's because Coca-Cola's in Atlanta, whatever, we call it a Coke. Out west, it's referred to as soda. Up in the Midwest, it's called pop, soda pop. Soft drink is popular up on the East Coast. Coca-Cola is more popular, again, in the Atlanta area. What do you refer to? You refer to it as a garbage can or a trash can. You put out the garbage can, the trash can. When you look at somebody's shoes, are they tennis shoes? Are they sneakers? Chicago and Cincinnati call them gym shoes. Why? It's just shoes. When you see a tractor trailer, is that a tractor trailer? Is that a semi truck? Is it an 18-wheeler? Again, a lot of it has to do with the region you're from. Is it a water fountain? Is it a drinking fountain? Or blah, blah? So what do we call certain words, or how do we enunciate certain words? You refer to caramel as caramel or caramel. Is mayonnaise or mayonnaise? Depending again on the region of the world or the United States that you're from. Are they pajamas or are they pajamas? Is it pecan pie or is it pecan pie? Pecan pie, pecan. Which one is it? Is it crawfish or is it crayfish? Or is it a crawdad? Is it a lawyer? Or is it a warrior or a lawyer? Again, depending on where you're from. And again, me as a Midwestern guy, I have a little bit of a paranoia because people have made fun of me for it down south. Ever since I lived down south, I'm nervous in the South when I say, someone who doesn't have any clothes on, referred to them as naked. I'm from the Midwest, we call it naked. We're down here, it's naked. Naked. It's hard because that phonetic sound just doesn't make sense to me. All right. Now, last thing, animal language development. There'll also be videos on here with Coco the gorilla. Can animals understand language? Of course they can. Some of them choose not to when they bark at the door all day, but of course they can understand language. All right, dogs can learn to sit. You want to go out, sit, roll over. Of course they can understand language because they communicate with language. They do all the nonverbal, bark loud or go to the door, whatever. But is it possible that an animal could use language to communicate? And the answer is yes. They've done this with chimpanzees. They've done this with gorilla. Coco the gorilla, and there's a couple of videos down below. Coco with the little kitty cat all ball, very sad story. Coco with the balloon, Coco meeting Robin Williams. Coco could communicate 2,000 different words using 1,000 different signs. But it was very simple because it was in a kind of a 2-word state. She could only put a couple of words together. Could understand grammar and sentence structure, but couldn't make grammar and sentence structures. But Coco was able to express needs, food, whatever, was able to express love, was able to mourn death, all of these things through this communication. Sadly, a couple of years ago, Coco did pass away at the age of 46, but I highly recommend you go down, you click on those videos as well. That's it. That wraps us up. Unit 6 is done.